Okay, so we're still in chapter 18, and this is going to be on cardiac muscle fibers. And we're going to start off by talking about cardiac muscle cells, so the microscopic anatomy. So cardiac muscle cells are striated, short, branched, fat, and interconnected. They have one or two nuclei, two at the most. They do contain a numerous amount of mitochondria. 25 to 35% of the cell volume consists of mitochondria. And what this does is this is going to give the cardiac muscle cell resistance to fatigue. The rest of the volume is composed of sarcomeres, including the Z discs, the A bands, I bands, all present. T-tubules present, but they're wider and less numerous. And then the sarcoplasmic reticulum is simpler than it is in skeletal muscle, and there are no triads. So intercalated disc are something that we find when we look at cardiac muscle cells. And what these do is these connect cardiac muscle cells together. And these connecting junctions contain two things: desmosomes and gap junctions. And desmosomes are what are actually going to hold the cardiac muscle cells together to prevent them from separating during contraction. And then gap junctions are going to electrically couple adjacent cells. And what this means is it's going to allow ions to go from one cell to another. And this is going to allow the heart to be a functional syncytium, which just means it's going to act as a single coordinated unit. On the left, this is what we would see in the lab. This would be cardiac muscle cells. We can see this is a cell here. It's kind of branching a little bit down. We can see more branching here. But what we do see also are these intercalated discs. And I want to show you the next slide. And this is just showing this is a diagram of the same thing we just saw. That would be a slide. And here we have the intercalated disc, right? And then this is showing these squares here. We're about to blow these up to where we can look at gap junctions and desmosomes. And again, gap junctions would look something like this. And what they're going to do is they're going to electrically couple cardiac muscle cells, and desmosomes are going to keep them from coming apart. There are some differences between cardiac and skeletal muscle, and the first is that some cardiac muscle cells are actually self-excitable. So there are two different types of myocytes. There's contractile cells, and those are going to be the ones responsible for actual contraction. And then there are the pacemaker cells. These are non-contractile. They spontaneously depolarize, and they actually initiate the depolarization of the entire heart. They do not require nervous system stimulation, and this is in contrast to skeletal muscle fibers, which do require nervous system stimulation to contract. The heart contracts as a unit. All cardiomyocytes contract as a unit or none contract, and this goes back to that contract as a unit idea as a functional syncytium. And then contraction of cardiomyocytes ensures effective pumping action, whereas skeletal muscles contract independently. The heart relies almost exclusively on aerobic respiration. The cardiac muscle does have more mitochondria than skeletal muscle, so it does actually have a greater dependence upon oxygen. It cannot function without oxygen. Skeletal muscle can actually go through fermentation whenever oxygen is not present. It doesn't produce as much ATP, but it can still go through fermentation. Both types of tissues can use other fuel sources, but cardiac muscle is more adaptable to other fuels, including lactic acid. But again, it must have oxygen. This table is just again showing some of the differences between skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. And then here's your question, which is briefly describe 3 differences between skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. And if I should have put on here, but I didn't, that I didn't intend for the descriptors. In other words, I know to not give me an answer like skeletal muscle is long and cylindrical and cardiac muscle is short and branched. I'm looking more for physiological differences. That's all I have.